Whether you're navigating career changes, life transitions, or simply trying to maintain your well-being in an increasingly complex world, today's session will provide you with the practical tools and resources to help you not just survive, but thrive. I'm pleased to introduce our presenters for today's session. First, we have Kim Moeller, a licensed professional counselor with the Alliance for Suicide Prevention in Fort Collins, Colorado. Kim specializes in mental health support and suicide prevention, bringing valuable clinical expertise to our discussion today. Joining her is Brenda Nickol, who serves as the Director of Career Services at the University of Nebraska Medical Center's College of Public Health. Brenda brings extensive experience in helping individuals navigate career transitions while maintaining their mental wellness. Together, they'll guide us through understanding the connection between mental wellness and life transitions. We ask that you please write any questions or comments you may have into the chat box, and we will address them. Kim, would you like to get us started?
Absolutely. Good morning or afternoon, wherever it is that you are at. I'm so happy to be here. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen with you and get us kicked off. Let's go ahead and do that. Okay. So again, I'm a mental health therapist in Colorado. I work at the Alliance for Suicide Prevention, and I'm here today to help you talk through stress, understand where is it coming from, what's happening in our body, where are we going, and also give you some really, really practical things that you can start doing today to help you move through those stressors, as well as promote gratitude and resilience. And then also Brenda's going to come in and talk to you about some really practical career tools that you can use. So one of the things that I want to start out with, and I just want to check my time, is that we need to have a definition. So when I'm talking about mental wellness, I'm not talking about diagnosable mental health issues, all right? I'm talking about how well we cope with stress, how we connect to others, and how we basically move through life. So today, some of the skills that I'm going to give you are Band-Aids. They're quick, practical things that you can do in the moment right now. And along with those Band-Aids, you're going to want to look for this little symbol for beliefs. So part of this is not just doing a quick one-off task, but also integrating it so that it becomes part of your daily life, so that you're using it throughout the day in a way that you don't even notice that you're using it. And to start out, I want to really talk about what stress is and what it isn't, what a stressor is versus stress. So stressors are those external events that we have, the things that are happening in our life that skyrocket your blood pressure, that make you just be like, right? We all know what that feels like. So why is that different from stress? Well, stress is an internal response. It is something that is happening inside our body. So the stressor might be right now, I don't know if you guys are feeling this, but right now, the stressor for our family is our daughter's out of school. And so we have summertime here and we've got camps and we're navigating all of these things. And that is a stressor. What to do with my kid during the summer is a stressor, right? But the stress is the internal way that I'm processing it, how I'm holding that stressor. So when we experience stress, our brain goes into fight or flight. This is a common thing that many people have heard or know of, right? Now, what that does when our body goes into fight or flight. So I like to talk about this is our wizard brain. This is the prefrontal cortex. This is where all of your decision-making power happens. Okay, so this is the wizard. And in the back, where our amygdala is, this is our lizard brain. This is fight or flight. I need help surviving, right? So when we experience an outside stressor, our body internalizes that into stress and it sends us into fight or flight. It releases cortisol, adrenaline in our body, our heart rate increases. And when we don't close the stress cycle, which is what I'm going to talk about in a little bit, it starts to have long-term effects on our health. So What we can do when we are experiencing a stressful situation, we have stressors, we're experiencing the stress ourselves. These are the most common things that our body can do. So, what you want to do is you want to complete the stress cycle. So, the cycle from, okay, I'm not safe, something's going on, I've got to work through this. My body goes into fight or flight. But really, what I'm looking for is how do I get me back into a parasympathetic state? How do I come back into rest? Now, these are things that actually matter. So just last week, I was having, work stress per usual. And at the end of the day, I went and did yoga. And as I was doing that, I'm thinking to myself, how am I releasing this from our body? So there's a very famous book called The Body Keeps the Score. And what it tells us is that in our body, in the muscles, the cells, it's holding that emotion, those feelings, those things that happen, the cortisol, the adrenaline is being held in our body. And so really, if you're in a stressful situation, most of the time we just move through it. We're like, oh, that was stressful. And then we just keep on going about our day. But if you can find the time to do any of these activities to help close that stress cycle, what you're doing is you're telling your body, I'm safe again. And what it does is it helps us move through it much easier. So physical activity, something as simple as walking, right? You can just going for a walk. And we're going to move through some of these other ones, rhythmic breathing. I promise I'm not going to make anybody cry today, but crying is it's a physical release. So if you're a person who can cry or cries easily, I love that for you. It's a wonderful way to help you move through stress. So let's talk about some of these really basic things that you can do so that, let's say today or tomorrow or next week, you're living life and an outside stressor comes to you and you think to yourself, oh, I need to close the stress loop. I need to remind my body that I can handle what's in front of me and that I'm safe right now. So when we're in stress, it's not just a physical experience that we have, right? It's something that happens mentally to us too. And so I'm going to show you some work by Kristen Neff. And in a second, we're going to take a self-compassion quiz. But I want to walk through some of the things that happen to us when we are having a negative stress response. And so if we are looking for work, all right, and I cannot find work, I'm feeling stressed out about the prospects ahead of me. One of the common responses is to lean into self-judgment. I'm not good enough. I'm never going to find the work. I I don't have the skills that I need. I'm not charming enough, whatever that is. And the opposite of that is self-kindness, right? I can do this. This might be hard, but I'm capable of hard things. I've gone through difficult things before. And it's the remembering, because here's the thing that a lot of people don't know is that our brains cannot tell the difference whether we're talking to somebody outside or talking to ourselves. It doesn't make sense for our brains to commute that. So when we are going through a stressful situation and we speak to ourselves the way we would speak to a friend, it's a really great thing to help. I can't think of the word right now, to combat that fight response. Another response that we often have in a stressful situation is the flight. So it's not that, oh, I'm not good enough, I can't do this, nothing's going to work out. It's the I just need to shut down. I can't even think straight. I don't know. But so this is my common response is my brain just goes quiet, right? It's like I was so overwhelmed. I don't even know what to do. And I just like freeze. You can see the freeze down here. We're going to talk a little bit about how that's different. But one of the things I want to point out is this isolation is different than for those who might be an introvert, right? So I am an introvert, but when I'm stressed out, that going into isolation, I'm not seeking the things that are supporting me during that time to rest and recover. So some things that combat this isolation is the remembering of common humanity. And what this looks like is I'm not alone in this experience. I am not the only one who's looking for work right now. For me, I'm running a nonprofit and I am not the only nonprofit who's worried about funding right now. It is giving myself an extra breath and remembering that this is not just me. And then again, this idea of freezing of rumination. This is the idea where I don't, what about this idea? What about this? And I get stuck between two decisions or maybe three. Maybe this is the right step. Maybe that is the right step. Here's a really practical thing that I think could be helpful when you're in the position of, I don't know what to do next. The first thing is we have to make a choice. So often, people want to know what is the right outcome? What is the right decision? How can I know? But the truth is, you won't ever know, in my experience. You don't know what your body is going to be like in that new experience, but you have to make the choice. Pick a choice, and then once you've made that choice, now you have information to make a further decision. So maybe my choice is, I don't know between this job or this job. And it's like, I don't know. I've done the things, I've talked to all of my people, I've made a T chart, I've tried all the things and I still don't know. The truth is, until you make a choice, it's gonna be hard to make a decision because you haven't had time to let it settle in your body. And so as you're in those spots, being mindful of what's working right now, where am I at right now? Okay, now to really get into this, I want to give you an opportunity. And right now, what we're going to do is take the self-compassion test. So this is, how well am I holding stress for myself? What does it look like for me to do that? And to do this, I'm going to have you scan this QR code. Now, before you do that, I'm going to give you 3 minutes, and there are 26 questions on this. At the end of the test, so this is 100% free. At the end of the test, it will say, please provide your email. But if you look really closely, there's a link right below that where you can say, skip to my results without an email. So I took this test again this morning just for timing sakes. But what I'm going to do is give you about 3 minutes, and then we'll come back together to talk more about that. So I'm going to go ahead and play this now and enjoy a cup of tea while I wait. You're about halfway there. Okay, so go ahead and finish that up if you're able. And as you're scrolling through that, what you're going to be able to find is how is my self-kindness? What am I looking for in common humanity? Can I see that this is an experience that's not just mine? And how present, how mindful am I in that moment? Now, now that you have these kind of like baseline for here's how I move through stress, I want to give you some of those really practical tips that we were talking about. Now, this first one, I often show this to people and they're like, "Really, Kim? Like that's the magic sauce? Like take a deep breath." But I'm telling you, this is proven, it's scientifically proven that breath work activates our body's relaxation response. When we engage in deep breathing, it calms our entire nervous system. This is something that is trained to Navy SEALs before they ever step into a stressful situation. This is part of their daily routine so that as they're moving through life, through those stressors that they might encounter, that this is part of how their nervous system is regulated. Now, for myself, you notice I put a little band-aid here, right? I would also challenge that this could become a belief system because this is something that I cannot emphasize enough as a practical tool that I use in my daily life. So when I start my day, when I am going through emails, and I don't know about you all, but sometimes I go through emails and I'm thinking to myself, oh my gosh, there's a million things here. When in reality, there's like 20 emails. I need to read through, like glance at some of, you know what I mean? Like the list isn't as bad as it seems, but internally, I am experiencing a a mountain of emotions and feelings and thoughts. And most of them are, oh my gosh, I can't do this. I'm so overwhelmed. In that moment, I'm taking deep breaths. In that moment, it is now an automatic thought for me to go, I need to pause. Now, here's the thing with box breathing. There is an inhale for 4 seconds and a hold for 4 seconds, exhale for four and hold. And people will be like, Kim, this feels weird. I don't like it. It's uncomfortable. It's not natural. And that's the point. That is the point, is so it pulls you out of your lizard brain and back into your wizard brain. So when your lizard turns into a dragon and gets really big and starts to overwhelm you, the way that the wizard tames the dragon so it comes back into a baby lizard is through breath and through those holds and through the release. So I'm going to give you 1 second. We're going to do it together, just around through 3, maybe 4 tries so you can feel how awkward it is. And then we'll move on to the next one. So we're going to inhale for 4, 3, 2, 1. Hold it. 1, 2, 3, 4, and release it. And hold. Inhale for 4, 3, 2, 1. Hold. 4, 3, 2, 1. Exhale. 4, 3, 2, 1. Hold. So that was just 2 quick rounds of breath. But again, this is a practical thing that will literally regulate your nervous system as you're moving, as you're moving through it. Now, these tools seem so simple and so basic, and I am confident that every person on this webinar has heard of these things before. They're not novel. I'm not presenting you with like, here's the magic wand to help your stress go away, but I am giving you these tools, and maybe you've heard of them. Maybe you've heard of them so many times, but you've never tried implementing them. What gratitude does, it's not just a coping skill. It's not just a Band-Aid. This also, as you'll notice we have there, it is a belief. So when we take time, so here's one practical thing you could try. As you're moving through these stressful life situations, looking for what is going well rather than what is not. So for 1 week, what you might do is keep a little notes thing on your phone and say, oh, this went well. Oh, this will, every time something good, I hit all the green lights on the way to work today. Nailed it on my presentation. Whatever it is, just keeping track of what is working well. And what happens is we start to see even more of what is going well, and it transforms our body. So tool that so often people use is write 3 things down. At the end of the day, just write 3 things, keep a little journal by your side, and watch the impact that it has. If you're thinking to yourself, this is so silly, this is stupid, like take a deep breath and write 3 things I'm grateful for, try it. Try it. Do an experiment. Do an experiment and do it for 1 week. Every single day, just remember to breathe and be grateful and see what happens. Because there, again, I'm going to say it again and over, there is science behind these things and implementing them into our lives. Now, mindfulness. You'll notice I didn't put meditation up here because the word mindfulness and meditation is a little bit triggering for everybody. And so what I want to do is help us recognize what it is and what it's not, right? So this is a state of being. This is when instead of the monkey mind that we have always going, it's recognizing when you're in the monkey mind. So here's what meditation is not. It is not quieting your brain or stopping it from working. Meditation is the active practice of recognizing your thoughts so that when they're running, you know that that's happening so that you don't become your thoughts. And instead, when we are mindful, we get to respond rather than react. And so I've got another awesome little video for you guys that I'm going to show. And then I have 2 more quick things. And then I'm going to pass it off to Brenda to work you through or walk you through some of those really practical life tools.
You may have heard this word mindfulness. It's become something of a buzz phrase of late. I'm going to give you one simple, serviceable definition, which is this. Mindfulness is the ability to know what's happening in your head at any given moment without getting carried away by it. Imagine how useful this could be. Just as an example, you're driving down the road and somebody cuts you off in traffic. How do you normally react? I think most of us, we normally react by having a thought, which is, I'm pissed. And then what happens next? You immediately, habitually, reflexively inhabit that thought. You actually become pissed. There's no buffer between the stimulus and your reaction. With just a little bit of mindfulness, in that same situation, you might notice my chest is buzzing, my ears are turning red, I'm having a starburst of self-righteous thoughts, I'm getting angry. But you don't necessarily have to act on it and chase that person down the road, screaming at them with your kids in the back of the car thinking you've gone nuts. Now, you might be thinking, don't I need to get angry sometimes? Aren't I justified? I would say yes, but probably not as much as you think. The proposition here is not that you should be rendered by mindfulness into some lifeless, non-judgmental blob. The proposition is that you should learn how to respond wisely to things that happen to you, rather than just reacting blindly. And that, my friends, is a superpower. How do you get it? The way to get it is through meditation. I believe that meditation and mindfulness are the next big public health revolution. In the 1940s, if you told somebody you were going running, they would have said, who's chasing you? But then what happened next? The scientists swooped in, they showed that physical exercise is really good for you, and now all of us do it, and if we don't, we feel guilty about it. And that's where I think we're headed with mindfulness and meditation. It's going to join the pantheon of no-brainers like brushing your teeth, eating well, and taking the meds your doctor prescribed for you. Let me just close by saying, mindfulness is not going to solve all of your problems. It's not going to render your life a nonstop parade of unicorns and rainbows. Nonetheless, this is a superpower, and one that is accessible by you immediately.
Okay. So I'm actually going to black out my screen for just a second because what I want is for us to all collectively take a breath together. Just now, I gave you 3 really basic tools, right? Deep breathing, gratitude, and mindfulness. Now, while these all may seem very basic, I will say it again. I want you to be a scientist. I want you to try it out. I want you to prove me wrong. I would love if you sent me an email in a month and be like, I tried it out for a whole month and guess what? You were wrong. I don't think that will happen. I think you'll say, holy moly, I never knew. right? Now, here's the thing. I loved in that video how they end it with this isn't going to solve all your problems because life keeps happening. Now, I'm a person who's 7 years sober, and when I got sober, one of my very first sponsors said to me, you need to be like an octopus, okay? You need to have your legs. So I didn't know this, but if an octopus, like one of their little arms gets cut off, it will grow back. But in the meantime, they have all these other things holding them and grounding them. And so as I'm moving through my life, here is the 8 dimensions of wellness. Now, it would be awesome if I was like crushing it in every single one of these things all the time, but that's just not life. I don't know anybody who can do that. Maybe you are that special circumstance. But what I do know is that it is my job to be an octopus. It is my job to have at least 1 foot in all of these so that if something happens, like heaven forbid, I get sick and I'm out for a week, I have other things that are tethering me to my wellness. And so one thing that I want you to consider is what is one dimension that you're excelling in? And you don't have to write this down, but if you do have a notebook, write it down, jot it down. Take a second. I'm going to give you a second to look through these. I want to know, you don't have to tell me, but for yourself, and this is again, if you're actually doing the exercise, it's going to help you. If you say it out loud, it's more powerful. If you write it down, it's more powerful than just letting it marinate in your brain. But what is one dimension that you're excelling at? Where are you crushing it? And then what's a dimension that you're ready to grow in? And be empowering about that, right? That self-kindness is really important for us all. Okay. So now I want to introduce you to a wellness plan. And down here in the bottom, there is a little QR code, and you can get just a plain Word document that you can print, you can save it, you can edit it, you can do it however that you want to. You guys can take it and make it your own. But I love the idea of a wellness plan. So in the mental health world, we often talk about safety plan. What do you do if you get into crisis? But for so long, we've only worried about people in crisis, right? What about how do we help people before they get to crisis, right? So we came up with this wellness plan. And I love, love, love this wellness plan. I do it with my family. I do it with my staff. I do it with the sponsees. It is such a wonderful thing. So when people are coming to me and they're like, man, I'm having a really hard time, one of the things that I'm often asking is, how's your wellness plan? What's on your wellness plan? This is a fantastic tool to use with staff if they're just like feeling off or right. But the first thing that we're doing is checking in with ourselves. Something that I do want to point out is that over here, things that almost always work, things that I do regularly that matter, things that I don't love, but they help, or things that I do love. You might have the same thing in many of these boxes. If you have something that shows up a lot, that is one of your primary coping skills. And it's really important to make note of that and to treat it with extra love and care, right? One of the things that we have found, I love this one, how can I be of service to others? So one of the things that we found is one of the greatest protective factors against suicide. And when we're talking about suicide, we're talking about the worst case extreme crisis situation, right? So how do we even get way before that? But to prevent suicide, one of the greatest things that people can do is be of service to others. Go and help somebody else. And it might be something simple. It might be just a phone call to say, hey, can I check in on you? I can tell you that one of the things that I do when I'm feeling the most stressed out is I call a friend to say, how are you doing? Because it gets me out of my own way. It stops me thinking about my own problems, and it puts me into a state of gratitude and mindfulness because I'm having a conversation with a person and I'm pulled into what is happening right then and there. So I can't encourage this enough. I think this is a wonderful exercise, a wonderful tool to use with yourself, use it with your teenagers, use it with your spouse, use it with your staff. Put it on their fridge. We have ours on the fridge at our home so that we are always moving towards wellness. I do see some questions coming through. Brenda, please feel free to stop me if we need to interrupt. I can't see any of your lovely faces. Okay, so what do we do? I love this to see. Live, laugh, love. We've all heard this. If I could see all your faces and you could raise hands, I guarantee there's at least three of you that have a sticker of this somewhere in your house still. You know, we got to really thank those millennials for this. I hope you guys never go into TJ Maxx again without remembering this. Okay, so here's what I want you to remember. Live is this is your test for how do I know if I need more help? How do I know if I need to reach out for somebody else? Because my stress has gone from I have this one experience and I'm super stressed to now it's impacting my life. So how do I know, right? So live is a person's ability to go to work, to go to school, to shower, to feed themselves. This is your ability to move through your daily life. Laugh is your ability to engage in satisfying activities. Are you doing things that bring you purpose and joy in your life? Now, I don't mean like every day is a vacation, but are you moving through the world in a way that brings you joy? And love is your ability to have positive relationships, not just with others, but most importantly with yourself. So, are you having difficulty living, laughing, or loving? Is it going on for at least 2 weeks or longer? Then it's definitely time to reach out and have a conversation with somebody for help. Now, the last thing I'm going to share before I turn it over to Brenda is I want to talk about the mental health helpline. I cannot stress how great this thing is. Now, it's going to vary state to state, okay? So I'm going to give you some quick information about this, but because it's so important, I'm going to play a quick game with you. I know I can't tell if you're doing it, but I'm going to assume you are doing it because you want to learn more, right? So you're going to put your thumb up like this. I know, go ahead. And then you put your finger up like this, and then you switch it. Some of you might be going like this. This is one more piece of mindfulness. Some of you might be like, what did she just do to my body right now, right? All this is activating both sides of your brain. It's the same as this thing. Anyway, I'm glad your brains are awake because I can't wait to tell you all about 988. So 988 originally was the Suicide and Prevention Lifeline, and they have rebranded it to the National Mental Health Helpline. And the reason they've done this is because for so long, people would only call this hotline if they were suicidal. And it is so much bigger than that. The majority of the calls that they get to 988, so it's call, text, or chat. It's 24/7. It is free. There's a line for veterans. There's a line for LGBTQ that goes directly to the Trevor Project. And there's a line for people with hard of hearing and also a Spanish line. And you can call, and this is like having a pocket therapist. You're going to get a trained mental health professional who's going to listen to your experience, validate, and offer coping skills. So if you've ever been in a situation where you're like, I just need to get this off my chest, I just need to tell somebody about this, or I'm really worried about somebody in my life and I need a resource for this, 988 is a place to go. Now, this is a hotline. One of the things that I do want to be clear is right now, 988, oh, farts. It was just on the top of my head. Let's go with this one. Less than 1% of calls ever get referred out to the police, okay? 99% of the people who call this helpline are able to get some relief, resources, and help as soon as they call. So here's a fascinating thing. If you practice calling 988, so today, here's another really simple thing that you can do that will help you further in the future. So if you call or text 988 today, and you just say, I'm just testing this out. You go through all of the prompts when they text you, or you just wait on the line. And when somebody gets on the line, you say, I'm just testing this out. First off, they're going to say, right on. I'm so glad you called. Do you have any questions? By doing that, by testing it out, you're 85% more likely to access it when you're experiencing a crisis because you know what to expect. Now, this is the last story that I will share. All right. 988 is not something that I just promote. It is something that I use personally. It's something that my staff use personally. And I want to share one experience of when I was using it. So I have somebody in my life who is very, very mentally ill and they needed a lot of help. And I couldn't help them. People were looking at me like, fix it because you're the therapist and you know the crisis stuff and fix it. And I just couldn't. And it was devastating to me. And one day I went and I dropped my daughter off at work and I just started crying in the car. As soon as she got out of the car, I was just weeping. And I was like, I need to call 988. So I call 988 and this magical unicorn of a human answered the phone. And she said and did all of the things that I needed to feel better in that moment. It was such a beautiful experience. Next day, same thing. Drop my daughter off. I'm still a hot mess. I start crying again. I was like, oh, I got to call 988 again. So I call 988. And this time I didn't get my unicorn, okay? I got more of a donkey. Now, I say that was so much love, all right? But this person was not my person. And 60% of this healing happens from, do I like and trust the person I'm talking to? And I share this because when I called back that second day and I got a donkey, I was like, oh, this is really disappointing and I really need help. So here's what I did. I said, thank you so much for what you're doing. I'm actually okay. I hung up and I called right back. Now, I didn't get my unicorn, but I definitely got a stallion. And again, everybody who answers that line is a human being doing their best, but sometimes they're not your person, and that is okay. Hang up and call again. End the text message and start over. And I know that for a person in deep crisis, that might not be helpful, but for somebody who's looking for resources or just looking for a place to experience their feelings in a safe and validating place, it is a wonderful resource that I can't share enough about. Okay. I think that is all that I have to share today. Brenda, you ready to hop on for the next slide?
Yeah,
Right
yes.
on.
And as I get started, I'm actually launching a quick poll for folks. If you can answer both of these questions, because I would love to make sure that what I'm about to say is on point for who we have. And I'm hoping you can all see the poll, right? It's as host, it always shows up strange. Okay, there I see some results. Also, I highly recommend for anyone who does presentations, I highly recommend following the mental health person who takes you through breathing exercises because this is the best I've ever felt before presenting. Thank you, Kim. I'm going to give you all just another moment and perfect. Thank you so much. So I'm going to end the poll and share the results. So we've got a mix. We have, okay, I had a feeling we'd have a very experienced group, and we do. And we have a pretty decent breakdown of folks who are employed versus looking or might be looking sometime in the future. So perfect. So I'm going to close the poll. This is why we wanted to combine kind of like this two sets of content today, because everything Kim just shared is so relevant for every single one of us in our daily lives. But there is something about the job search that's particularly stressful. If only it could look and feel like this picture all the time, right? But it doesn't. So next slide. Part of why it does not always like feel nice and calm is because you feel like you're literally putting yourself out there to be judged. And every time you are not picked, it can feel like rejection and self-doubt, and you're like, what is going on? And the longer it goes on, it can feel worse and worse. And the first thing I want to share from a mindset perspective is to remember that you are only like one tiny part of the equation in any scenario of filling an open position. And so we have a very experienced group of participants. I'm guessing most of you have played a role in hiring teams where you've been a part of interviewing or making the decision. And so if you're now on the other side of the table, remind yourselves of all of the factors that were at play. So the decision never came down solely to who's the smartest or who's the most experienced. There were always a lot of different factors around, we really need someone who can like restore relationships with this set of our partners, or like there's so many different things. And so if you've done a great job of getting your experience documented and talking about it in the interview, you can kind of trust that whatever decision is made is not only the right decision for them, but the right decision for you. So that's kind of the first mindset thing. But I do want to share 3 specific things that I have found most helpful. Like when I'm working with folks who are really, yes, this is perfect. Thanks, Kim. The things that kind of manage some of the stress that accumulates in the job search. And the first thing, again, feels very obvious, but please, please, please create a schedule. And I mean this in kind of like a broad stroke schedule, and I would like for it to be a weekly schedule. And so what I mean is you'll get the hang of like where to start looking for jobs. And you might have a list of like your top 10 employers where you'd love to work. Or maybe you're using search engines like Indeed or LinkedIn. And you want to kind of slate, a handful of them that you're going to look at each day of the week. And for the search engines, you might even have them show up more than once, but you would have additional keywords assigned to different days. And the reason why a schedule is so important, there's two main things. So one, all jobs are posted for at least a handful of business days. And so if you have kind of like this rotation going, you're not going to miss the gem. And if you don't have the schedule, you might be like, oh my gosh, I have to check this website every day. And you'll just feel like you can never stop. And so this rotation will help you know you're going to catch any of the stuff that's a really good match. The second reason is this is what's going to give you the luxury of time for yourself and other activities. If you don't have a schedule, you are going to feel guilty anytime you're not doing job search stuff. And this not only is not healthy for you, as we've like, you wouldn't have time for any of your self-care stuff, but it actually, that energy ends up leaking into your interview. And it becomes really tough to like own your confidence if you're just spending like nose down all day, every day, looking at all of the things you're trying to be and do. I also would encourage you to think about when you're at your best. And this could be day of the week or time of day, because the job searching you can do with pretty little bandwidth, right? You can like do some keyword searching in 10 minutes here or there. The actual focus that it takes to tailor your resume, you need to be at your best for that task. And so think about your week and when you can actually like not be distracted and be wordsmithing your resume and get that in your schedule. Next slide. I also encourage you to dedicate time to connect with others and for any potential learning or volunteering. And this doesn't mean like learning a million new skills. These are simply things that can help you remind yourself of who you are, why you got into this field in the first place, and also stay and feel fresh and relevant. Because if you're only sitting at your computer, you will start to just focus on how you don't have all of these things, or I don't understand what this job is saying. But talking to others, it'll have conversations around, oh, like, yeah, I have done similar things like that over here. We just called it something different. So it will build your vocabulary. It will remind you who you are. And then also sometimes give you something or access to some opportunities that maybe you didn't expect. Okay, next slide. So this one is helpful in managing expectations. So in any job search or job decision, there are often considerations that fall into these three buckets. The job is anything: title, tasks, pay, organization, etc. But then there's a lot of reasons why we might have needs geographic based. And then sometimes we'll have some timeline needs. And this could be students who are graduating on a visa, or this could be you cannot go a month without a paycheck. So anytime you have specific needs that are really tight in one bucket, you will need to be as flexible as possible in the other two buckets. And this might mean that you have more than one strategy. So for example, if you are tied to a specific geographic area and you know that you absolutely need a paycheck, then maybe your immediate strategy is to be very flexible on the job itself, find anything that allows you to bring some income in, while you also have that longer timeline strategy of setting yourself up for like a proper career move. So this can just help manage expectations. Next slide. Okay, finally, a handful of tools that I think can help you build some of the confidence in the job search, especially if you've never actually like been on a full job search or it's been a while. Because sometimes, especially in environmental health, this is one of those areas you can get into at the bachelor's level and progress pretty high up in a really kind of organic way. And so there's a chance that some of you could be on the job search now or in the near future in a way that you haven't ever been before. So here are some cool tools. The first one is Career Dreamer from Google, which was just launched this year. And what you'll do is you just literally type in Google Career Dreamer. Next slide. You'll enter position information, and it can be as generic or specific as you want to. For this one, I think I put environmental health specialist, federal government. And it will come up with a set of tasks, and you click as many that are applicable to you as appropriate. And then next slide. Then you get to select skill areas. And so again, it pre-populates these and you check the ones that apply. And you can do this for one position, or you can plug in additional positions. And then when you go to the next page, you can hit explore. There's all sorts of other functionality, by the way. I'm just doing some highlights. And of course, some of these job titles won't be applicable to you, but there might be some hidden gems that you never thought of, and you can click on any of them and it will show you where does your experience overlap and where might you have some gaps. So this is a way you might be able to start thinking about yourself in new ways. Now, I will say the job market in environmental health is still fairly strong, but I'm sharing this in case you need to expand what you're looking at in terms of job titles. This can be a helpful way. And if you were to go back to like that task list and think about the way those were worded are a really helpful way for you to be thinking about how to talk about yourself. Because when you are working, you're just doing your job and you're just doing a good job about it. You aren't thinking of yourself in verb, verse, bullet points. And that is a skill that's so tough to develop, but this takes the work of that away for you, or it takes the like the challenge of it away. And it will start to be like, oh yeah, I do have like all of these categories of experience that I bring to the table. Okay, next slide. LinkedIn is something we all know and love, I'm sure. A really cool thing you can do with LinkedIn, even if you don't love it, I want you to do this. You can do reverse searching in LinkedIn. So in the search toolbar, do a keyword search, in this case, environmental health policy, and you can click on one of those subcategories. So if you click on posts, you're going to get a whole feed of posts related to environmental health policy. This can be helpful because you will find people who are regularly sharing opportunities. You will also find people that are just kind of leaders in the field, or maybe folks who are working in this space for organizations, a whole sector that wasn't on your radar. And if you interact with those posts, or if you follow some of those people, it will start to train your LinkedIn algorithm to work for you. So it's a really easy, simple way for you to expand what you think of when you think of your own career. And same with people. If you click on people, you'll see everyone who has those words in their profile. You can click on them and look through their history of job titles, organizations, and get some more ideas of what are things that you never even thought of because you were doing stuff you loved. You didn't have to think about this. So, two cool new ways that you can use LinkedIn. And then the final words of advice that I have for you are related to AI. Lots of comments we could make about AI. What I'm going to share has to do with the tailoring of the resume, because you do need to tailor your resume. Please don't use AI to do the whole thing. So don't put your whole resume in the AI because employers can tell. Also, don't put your personal information in there. But AI is brilliant for the fine tuning. So you can have a summary of qualifications at the top and use AI to build your communication skills for that summary of qualifications, and just kind of have that conversation with AI about you're really trying to emphasize X, Y, Z from your background. You've got this experience and that experience, and you're trying to position yourself for X type of role. And AI will spit out a summary of qualifications that will literally make you feel like a superhero. And then you can tailor it into your own words. The other thing you can do, job descriptions can be terrible to understand. It'll be a list of 30 qualifications, and you're like, how the heck do I actually communicate that on my resume? You put the job description into AI and you ask it to synthesize the key points of that job description. What should I be highlighting in terms of my experience and my skills? And it will spit the results out more in categories that are just easier for our brains to connect to. Because now, instead of addressing 30 things, you're addressing project management, collaboration, and communication. And that is more understandable. Okay, so those are the top things I have. We left 10 minutes for questions. For AI tools, personal preference. So for what I just shared today, I would say ChatGPT produces my favorite results just because I like the little emojis and I like the labels they come up with. Like it just clicks with me. There are really good AI tools out there, though, that are specific for resumes and interview prep. So that's another conversation. All right, but I want to pause and now open it up for any and all questions that you all have about anything we covered. Oh, and of course, Kim has like the best final slide also.
So I have a question that popped into my head while we get this going. Do you find it interesting that on your poll question, the majority of our attendees have been in their career for 10 plus years?
I expected this to be a very experienced group for a couple of reasons. Because one, the nature of environmental health, like I said, there's so much room for growth. And it's something you can get into early career and grow. And so I tend to see people in this space for quite some time for their career. And then the second thing, I've also worked at a professional association in the past, and I know that, our joiners, our people who show up for things, tend to be engaged professionals and early career. The other half of my job working with students is I'm trying to convince students and early career people to come to these things and like get involved with their professional associations. So honestly, I'm not surprised by that poll result.
Now, my brain went the opposite direction. When I saw that statistic, I thought, oh, they're getting burned out. They've been in this career for 10 plus years. That's why they're here more than early career individuals.
Gotcha. Oh, well, that I think is the context we're living in right now. Yes. Also not, unfortunately, I'm not, and trust me, the smiles I'm bringing to the conversation are not indicative of my understanding of the context we're living in. So, and my heart really goes out to any of you that were in that category of being impacted already or potentially in the future. I'm being contacted honestly at least once a week by our own students and alumni who are being impacted by budgets. And so that's why we're here, because it is stressful. But there are a lot of tools out there to help you.
And speaking of stressful, Kim, I'm going to pop back to you.
Yeah.
I've always told myself and others, I heard it a long time ago, and it always seemed to help me when you're in a stressful situation and you really don't know what to do. And it was the rock climber's creed. And that is, no situation is permanent. If you're stuck hanging on the side of the cliff, you're not going to be there for the rest of your life. How do you see that kind of mindset working in a career atmosphere?
Yeah, I think it brings us back to mindfulness is what is right here, right now. So when I think about this, I think about like my own organization where we're part of our funding is federal and we don't know where we're at or what's going to happen. And I could spin my wheels into, oh no, what is next year going to look like? But right now, right today, my staff is doing great. We have solid reserves. They're all crushing it at their jobs. And if I can focus on that, what I find is it's empowering them. It's empowering me to be focused on what is working right now, because I can't control the future, but I can control today. And I see that too with so many of these things is what is happening right here, right now.
My other question for you, Kim, is what would you say to the individual who feels maybe uncomfortable to reach out to the national hotline saying, oh, it's not that bad. Other people need it more than me.
Yes.
Or, oh, I don't want to waste anybody's time. I'm not worthy to call. What do you say to those individuals to get that initial step?
That's a great question, because that is something that we hear often. And so if there's anything I could say is you're the community too. You matter too. And this is not the way that we define crisis at the hotline. And I don't work at the hotline, but I work with them is if it's a crisis to you, it's a crisis to us. There is no such thing as too small, or I'm afraid to waste their time, or I'm telling you that is what they are there for. And a lot of them, well, I don't know, it varies state to state, but I do know that when you give the opportunity for them to do their job, they're going to be happy. Like that's literally, they're just waiting around, sitting, waiting for calls. Like I often think to myself, like, we would be willing to pick up the phone if somebody we loved was hurting. But what about if it's ourselves, right? And so doing for yourselves what you would do for the people that you love. What would you do if it was your best friend and they're like, oh, I don't know. Shouldn't I? What if it's too small? Try it out. And if nothing else I can say is try it out. Please, please, please go home and test out the hotline so that you're 85% more likely to use it if you really, truly need it.
And your other comment too, and Brenda, chime in on this one too. I find it real interesting when you said at the beginning that our brain doesn't know
Yes.
self-talk versus real talk.
Yeah, external communication. So the things that we're saying out loud. So if I'm walking around all day and I'm just judging everybody around me, judgment, 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 my brain is giving that to myself. I'm also doing that to myself. My brain internalizes the things that I externalize. And so it's so, so important to be mindful of how we speak to the people around us, but also how we speak to ourselves.
I'm going to toss you in on this one as well, because when we just did a webinar a week or so ago, it's up on our YouTube channel if anybody's interested in seeing it, and we addressed imposter syndrome. So what about those who are searching for a job and that negative self-talk, or they're thinking, oh, I'm not qualified for that. I shouldn't even try it.
And that's where I think we have a big advantage right now with some of these tools that are out there. And that was actually a driving factor of how I chose what to include today, because I genuinely think half the battle is the vocabulary, and understanding the similarities between what you've done and what the opportunity you're applying for, what they're looking for. And so that's why having conversations with other people, even if it is not directly related to your space, just getting out and volunteering at the food bank or anything, you're just going to hear people talking about things and you're like, oh, that is the same thing. We just use a different framework or different wording. And so all of those tools, and that's where I think like the Google Career Dreamer is so helpful to just expand the way that you talk about yourself. Because obviously, I mean, it should go without saying, I don't want you to lie on your resume. And all of you are experienced enough that you definitely don't need to. But your resume is not meant to be an exhaustive, like, listing of everything you've done in your career. It really is just the evidence of how can you do the job that they're looking to fill. And so you really do need to use the terms that they are using, and something that might have been just a little fringe aspect of a job. So let's say maybe you were on a particular, like a quality improvement committee at your workplace. That might have only been a quarterly meeting of your time in that job, but it could be at the forefront of how you're qualified for this job. So you would really emphasize that in your bullet points and remove a bunch of other stuff. So it's, and you would be surprised because like using those resume tools, and I didn't have a screenshot of it, or not resume, but the AI tools like Google Dreamer, it actually comes up with like a professional identity statement also that is that confidence boost of like, oh yeah, if I read that about someone else, like Kim was just saying, self-talk versus outside. So if I read that about someone else, I would be impressed. Well, that's you. That's also you.
Love
Well,
it.
Brenda, this has been a fabulous session. Thank you so much for sharing your expertise and knowledge with us. Like I said, my mind's already spinning on so many things that you said that I wrote down that I'm going to go back to. And the tools that you supplied us with today, fabulous. So to everyone who attended, thank you for attending. And again, join me in thanking Kim and Brenda. And if you're not a NEHA member, we encourage you to be one. You can join us at neha.org. We would also ask that you please take a few moments to fill out the short survey. Your feedback is instrumental in allowing us to bring you the topics that you need and to complete our mission at NEHA, which is to build, sustain, and empower an effective environmental workforce. So again, thank you to our presenters and thank you to all that attended. And we wish you a best of the rest of your day.